Let's kick things off with Japan and the kimono, one of the most recognizable traditional garments on the planet. This T-shaped silk robe has been around since the 8th century, and it is still worn today for tea ceremonies, weddings, and summer festivals. But here's what most people don't know. How you tie the obi, that wide belt around the waist, changes everything about the look. There are literally professional kimono dressers whose entire job is to wrap it correctly. Also, the patterns aren't random. Season, occasion, even your age determines what design you wear. It's a whole language in fabric form. Fun fact, the word kimono literally just means thing to wear. Simple name, iconic result. India. India is basically a continent of fashion all on its own. 28 states, hundreds of communities, each with their own textile traditions. But the saree is the crown jewel. It's a single unstitched piece of fabric, anywhere from 5 to 9 meters long, draped in over 80 different regional styles. The way a woman from Tamil Nadu drapes it looks completely different from a Bengali or Gujarati style. On the men's side, the Sherwani, a long embroidered coat worn over a fitted churidar, is the go-to for weddings and celebrations. India basically said, why wear clothes when you can wear a moving work of art? Fun fact, the Kanjivaram silk saree from Tamil Nadu takes 4 to 6 weeks to weave by hand. One saree. Bhutan. This tiny Himalayan kingdom is one of the only countries in the world where traditional dress is required by law in official spaces. Government offices, schools, temples, formal events. Men wear the Gho, a knee-length robe folded and tied at the waist, forming a pouch up front that Bhutanese men use like a pocket. Women wear the Kira, an ankle-length dress made from hand-woven fabric with intricate patterns. The colors and weaves actually indicate social status and region. And the really wild part? This isn't a heritage revival project. People just wear this every day. Bhutan said modernize everything except the wardrobe. Fun fact, Bhutanese fabric patterns are so complex that some traditional textiles sell for thousands of dollars per meter. Morocco. Morocco brings us the Djellaba, a long, loose, hooded robe worn by both men and women across the country. Men's djellabas tend to be white or earthy tones, kept clean and minimal. Women's versions? An explosion of embroidery, color, and detail, especially for celebrations. Pair it with babouche slippers, those iconic pointed leather shoes made in the Medina, and you've got an outfit that looks like it came straight out of a fairy tale. The djellaba is so practical. It works in heat, keeps off cool evening air, and somehow always looks elegant. Moroccan fashion understood the assignment centuries ago. Fun fact, the city of Fez has been producing leather babouche slippers using the same tannery techniques since the 11th century. South Korea. South Korea's Hanbok might genuinely be one of the most beautiful traditional outfits on this entire list. And I'm not saying that lightly. We're talking about wide, structured silhouettes in 2 contrasting colors. Women wear a jogari, a fitted short jacket, paired with a chima, a full, dramatically flared skirt. Men's hanbok features wide-legged pants called baji, topped with a jogari of their own. The colors traditionally carried meaning: pink and blue for children, deeper tones for adults, white for mourning. Dating back to the Three Kingdoms period around the 1st century BC, the hanbok is ancient, but it's also having a major modern moment thanks to Korean pop culture putting it back in the spotlight. Fun fact, the National Folk Museum of Korea holds over 150 distinct regional hanbok variations in its archive. Nigeria. Nigeria does not come to play. The Agbada is a 3-piece wide flowing ensemble worn by men, a large outer robe, an inner tunic, and matching trousers, often in rich deep blues, whites, or golds, and heavily embroidered around the neckline and cuffs. It is the definition of commanding. Women rock the Ankara, bold, geometric wax-printed fabric sewn into wrap dresses, skirts, tops, and head ties, often all at once and all coordinated. Nigerian fashion is loud, proud, and completely intentional. If you've ever seen photos from a Nigerian Owambe party, you already know. These people are not dressing down. Ever. Fun fact, a single Ankara can take a master tailor up to 2 weeks of embroidery work to complete by hand. Georgia. The Chokha is a fitted, flared coat, usually in dark gray, black, or deep red, with a distinctive row of cylindrical pockets sewn horizontally across the chest. Those pockets originally held gunpowder charges or cartridges. Today they're purely decorative, but they still give the whole look this warrior poet energy. It's like what would happen if a Renaissance nobleman and a mountain fighter collaborated on a coat. Absolutely stunning, and almost completely unknown outside the Caucasus region. Fun fact, the Chokha is still worn at formal Georgian events today and has been proposed as a UNESCO cultural heritage item. Mexico. Mexico's traditional clothing is a gorgeous collision of indigenous heritage and Spanish colonial influence. On one side, you have the Charro suit, the full mariachi look, a tailored jacket and trousers covered in silver buttons and embroidery, worn with a wide-brimmed sombrero. It screams confidence. But equally important is the Huipil, a hand-embroidered tunic worn by indigenous women across southern Mexico and Central America. Here's the fascinating part. Every community has its own unique pattern for the Huipil, almost like a textile passport that tells you exactly where someone is from. 2 Huipils side by side from neighboring villages can look completely different. Fun fact, some Huipil patterns are considered so sacred that the designs are kept within specific families and never shared with outsiders. Norway. Norway's Bunad is one of Europe's most actively worn national costumes, and I really mean actively worn. This isn't something gathering dust in a museum. Norwegians pull out their Bunad for Constitution Day on May 17th, for weddings, confirmations, and major national celebrations. Each Bunad is specific to a region. The Telemark Bunad looks nothing like the Hardanger version, and they can cost anywhere from 2,000 to over 10,000 euros to commission properly. They're often passed down through generations. Owning a Bunad is both a fashion statement and a declaration of exactly where your family roots lie. Norway said, heritage is worth the price tag. Fun fact, there are over 400 officially recognized regional Bunad variants across Norway. Bolivia. Bolivia's Cholita style has been having a global fashion moment, and it is completely deserved. Indigenous Aymara women wear layered Polera skirts in vibrant colors, a colorful shawl called a manta draped over the shoulders, and here's the wildest part, a bowler hat. That bowler hat was actually introduced to Bolivia by British railway workers in the 1920s. The story goes that a shipment of hats arrived too small for the British men, so they were sold to local women, who completely reinvented the style as their own. Today, a perfectly tilted bowler hat on a Cholita is a symbol of indigenous pride, political power, and cultural identity. Bolivia took someone else's fashion accident and made it iconic. Fun fact, Cholita wrestling, indigenous women in full traditional dress doing professional wrestling, is a real and beloved Bolivian sport. Indonesia. Indonesia has over 300 distinct ethnic groups, so narrowing it down is genuinely difficult. But batik is the fabric that unifies the entire nation. Batik is made using a wax-resist dyeing technique, where hot wax is applied in intricate patterns before dyeing, creating incredibly detailed geometric and natural designs. UNESCO recognized it as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2009. Women traditionally pair batik sarongs with the kebaya, a sheer lace blouse that manages to be both delicate and incredibly structured. In Indonesia, batik is worn to government offices, formal ceremonies, casual Fridays, and everywhere in between. It's their national superpower in fabric form. Fun fact, Indonesia's Batik Day, celebrated every October 2nd, sees the entire country dress in batik simultaneously. Scotland. The Scottish kilt needs no introduction, but it does deserve more credit than just skirt for men. A proper belted kilt is made from tartan wool, pleated at the back, and each tartan pattern historically belongs to a specific clan. Wear the wrong tartan at a Scottish gathering? and you will hear about it. The full Highland dress adds a sporran, a small pouch worn at the front, knee-high hose, a ski-and-do knife tucked in the sock, and sometimes a Prince Charlie jacket. The kilt survived centuries, including an actual act of parliament banning it in 1746. It came back. It always comes back. At this point, the kilt is simply indestructible. Fun fact, the Dress Act of 1746 banned Highland dress after the Jacobite Rising. It was repealed 35 years later in 1782. Mongolia. The Mongolian Deel is one of the most quietly brilliant pieces of clothing ever designed. It's a long, wrap-front robe with a high collar, worn belted at the waist, and it's been the daily wear of nomadic peoples across the Central Asian steppe for over 1,000 years. Different ethnic groups have their own colors, cuts, and embroidery. A Khalkha Mongolian Deel looks different from a Kazakh or Buryat version. And the functionality is unreal. It works as outerwear, as a blanket, even as a makeshift pillow. It's perfectly designed for life on horseback in a climate that swings from minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter to scorching summers. The Deel is what happens when fashion is engineered for actual survival. Fun fact, in traditional Mongolian culture, gifting someone a Deel is one of the highest expressions of respect. Peru. Peru's Andean highlands produce some of the most colorful traditional clothing on Earth. Hand-woven ponchos and mantas burst with geometric patterns in reds, golds, and electric blues, each design carrying information about the weaver's community, marital status, and social position. The weaving techniques used here predate the Inca Empire by centuries. And then there's the chulo, that knitted hat with ear flaps you've definitely seen in photos. Essential gear when you're living at 4,000 meters above sea level. Peruvian textiles are so complex that modern anthropologists use them like written documents to understand pre-colonial Andean societies. The fabric literally tells the story. Fun fact, Peruvian weavers from Chinchero are sometimes invited to NASA to study how their complex pattern encoding might apply to data storage systems. Ethiopia. An outfit that might be the most elegant on this entire list. The Habesha Kemis is a long white cotton dress worn by women, hand-woven with a colorful border called a tiraz running along the hem, cuffs, and neckline. For religious celebrations and special occasions, it's paired with a shema, a lightweight white cotton shawl. The fabric, called Habesha cloth, takes skilled weavers days or weeks to produce on a traditional handloom. There's no shortcut. In a world that produces clothes by the billion in automated factories, the Habesha Kemis is a quiet but powerful reminder that some things are still worth doing slowly, by hand, with intention. And it shows.